Where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
It's Sunday, February 5th. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. Good evening. I'm Stephanie Guadian. For the next half hour, we will be talking about the controversial Texas Senate Bill 4. A state Senate panel just approved the so-called Sanctuary Cities bill, which aims to eliminate sanctuary cities in the state of Texas. It would withhold state money from local jurisdictions that don't hand over immigrants already in custody for possible deportation. The Senate State Affairs Committee okayed the bill early Friday after more than 16 hours of often emotional testimony.
The fear paralyzes myself and my family. I ask you today, see me, see us, see the wife, the mother, the sister, the daughter that wants to belong again and have justice for all, not just some. Thank you.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is blocking funding to so-called sanctuary cities. This comes after the Travis County Sheriff stopped complying with federal immigration detainers. Travis County will lose more than $1 million. State Republican Senator Charles Perry, who authored the bill, says local authorities must enforce the law. Perry says this is not a deportation bill, rather a rule of law bill.
For those communities that choose to not do that and actually provide safe haven to illegal undocumented immigrants that have committed crimes and release them back into the community, that is not acceptable. And that's part of what SB4 is, but I do not want to discount the fact that at the heart of SB4, it's about rule of law and order, and it's about providing or protecting the integrity of our civil and criminal justice system.
And we want to hear from you tonight. You can email us your comments and your questions right now to ABC7 Extra at KVIA.com. You can also reach us at 915-496-1771 or tweet me at Guadian ABC7. Just remember to use the hashtag ABC7 Extra. SB4 deals with so-called sanctuary cities. Although it doesn't define the term, it doesn't give officers the right to stop or search people to enforce immigration law. But there are exceptions at the request of or assisting a federal officer. 3 well-known El Pasoans made the trip to Austin to voice their opinions. El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar, County Commissioner David Stout, and immigration attorney Carlos Spector all spoke against the proposed legislation. 2 weeks ago, State Senator Jose Rodriguez told the Texas Tribune he could support the detainer component of the current proposal, especially if it means it will keep more extreme measures at bay. But at the Senate hearing, Rodriguez was not in favor of the bill. At one point, he questioned Spector.
In practical terms, for the work that you do, what would this bill do to your clients?
It makes law enforcement in Texas immigration agents. All they have to do is get on the phone and say, Bob, this is Floyd. I got 3 Mexicans in a car. Can I stop them? That's the request. He says, can you request it? Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, go ahead and stop them.
Governor Greg Abbott wants to deny taxpayer money to cities that don't detain immigrants and remove locally elected officials if they don't comply.
They're definitely trying to bully local officials and local law enforcement into doing what they want us to do.
Judge Escobar told a Senate panel SB4 would increase local property taxes. She said in part, when counties and cities get sued for racial profiling, which is sure to happen when you force local law enforcement, good people who have not received the same training as Border Patrol officers to become de facto immigration agents, who pays the bill for those settlements and or judgments? Local property taxpayers have to pick up the tab as well. Joining us now, my guests tonight are El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar and El Paso County Chair of the Republican Party, Adolfo Tejas. I want to thank you both very much for being here tonight. You're welcome. Veronica, I want to start with you. Let's explain a little bit about what exactly would happen differently if this bill becomes reality.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for having us on the show. The bill, and actually the amended bill, requires quite a bit of local taxpayer investment. If the bill passes, we're going to have to change our booking process. We're probably going to have to change some of the setup at our jail, which will cost money. We will have to increase personnel at the Sheriff's Department, which will cost taxpayers money. We will probably be at the beck and call of the federal government to hold prisoners, whichever prisoners they say we need to hold for as long as they want them held, which will increase the costs of our jail beds and take up space in our jail. And we believe that it will create racial profiling. We also believe that it will make El Paso a less safe community. We heard from law enforcement agent after law enforcement agent, including our own local sheriff, Richard Wiles, and I know Chief Allen was there as well, and unanimously they all are against this bill. You have local law enforcement telling senators from other parts of the state, you will make us less safe if you do this. You will erode the trust in the community if you do this, and there will be consequences for local taxpayers if you do this.
Okay, well, I definitely want to bring in Adolfo on this. What exactly do you, tell us why you support this? Why do you think it's a good idea?
Well, let me comment on a couple things. First of all, sanctuary cities are cities that shelter illegal immigrants, and that's important. And when we talk about the cost, yeah, there's probably a cost to it, but we also don't talk about the cost of having illegal immigrants here. The health care that we provide them is tremendous. The education that we provide them is tremendous. There's additional border, interior and exterior of the country, I mean at the border and in the rest of the United States. There's additional costs related to that are tremendous. There's also welfare benefits that we pay for, give these people. And again, that has not been, nobody takes the time to figure that out. Everybody just takes the time to figure out what's the cost related to changing this. The other point that I want to make is we are a country of laws. And the pledge that was taken, not just by our sheriff, but also by all of our city commissioners, when they took office, they pledged to do their best to defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state of Texas. And when they're promoting or having people here that don't comply with the law, that's wrong. They're violating their pledge that they did with their hand on the Bible and the other hand raised, and they prayed in God's name, and we elected them to carry out the laws, and they're not doing that. So I struggle with how people cannot support the laws that they were elected to support.
All right.
And that's a concern of mine, big concern.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Go
ahead, Veronica.
Respond to that if you don't mind. I'd like for Mr. Theus to point out any single incident where we're not complying with the law. What we're saying is that there are jurisdictions that are in charge of various laws. You have local police forces in charge of enforcing local laws and state laws. You have sheriff's deputies, same state and local laws. And you have federal law enforcement enforcing federal immigration law. To try to conflate the two is to say we should have federal immigration law enforcement agents enforcing municipal laws because these laws exist. No, there is training involved for every agency and for every jurisdiction. The federal immigration agents enforce federal immigration laws, and we're asking for local folks to continue to enforce local laws.
Okay, let me make a couple of comments related to that. First of all, you made a pledge, so did Sheriff Wiles. The document that Sheriff Wiles said, and the quote in the newspaper stated that when immigration and naturalization contacts us about keeping somebody, we're going to do that. But it doesn't say that if we are aware of somebody that should be withheld or should be reported to them, he doesn't do that. That's not what's occurring. Now the other part is the first point of contact with somebody that's breaking the law is local law enforcement. And if they don't enforce the rest of the law enforcement, then nothing's going to happen. When there's an interstate kidnapping, that's a federal offense. And when a local policeman identifies that, the first thing to do is they contact the FBI. Well, that's all these people are asking. When you make an arrest for committing a crime, and it's not the first crime, it's the second crime, because the first crime that was committed was breaking the laws of the United States by staying here illegally. That's the first crime. So anything after that is a second crime. And if they're going to break the law, They're here, they know they're here illegally, they know they're at risk of consequences. And I think the illegals that are here have to deal with that.
Okay, I want to give Veronica a chance to respond to that, and then we're going to take a couple calls. Veronica, go ahead.
So yet again, it's almost like we have folks who are looking to make us a less safe community. El Paso enjoys being one of the safest communities in the country because local law enforcement determine how they are going to enforce the law, enforce local law, how they are going to collaborate with federal and state agents, which happens very effectively here locally. This will make us less safe. We have heard that from a number of top law enforcement agents. I am going to take my cues about what keeps us safe from the folks who are in charge of law enforcement. And the problem with this law, the additional problem is when we become less safe as a result of this law, our local citizens, our voters, don't have anyone they can hold accountable for making us less safe, because these laws are being passed by people in parts of Texas and in districts away from El Paso, so they cannot be held accountable for what they're about to do to us.
All right, Veronica, just a sec. We're going to get back to you, Adolfo, in just a second, but I really want to bring our audience into this. We do have a tweet from Cheryl Lamb. She says, dissent is patriotism when fighting injustice, the reason we have amendments to the Constitution. We also have a couple callers waiting to give their comments or questions. Go ahead, first caller.
Hi, this is Robert. I don't think it's good to have legislation that would inhibit the ability of police departments to set their own policies and practices and priorities for their officers. I think that would undermine public safety, and I think SB4 would do exactly that. It would undermine the public safety of the state of Texas and our communities. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you very much for calling. But let's go ahead and listen into one more call, and then we'll get both of your reactions.
Hi, Arlen. I'm calling from the west side of El Paso. I want to know what happens when a police officer is doing some immigration enforcement and there's an accident or there's a crime and they're busy and they can't take care of the community they're supposed to be taking care of. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Adolfo. I'm going to go ahead and give you first chance to respond to the callers.
Okay. The first thing I want to point out, to back up a little bit, is if you Google relationships between the police when they have to enforce immigration, there's the Center for Immigration, I can't remember the exact name, Center for Immigration Concern. They found that there is no impact when local police officers start to enforce immigration. The other side of it is the incident that was just presented. It happens all the time. I think if you talk to our local police officer, not the sheriff's, he has talked about how he is understaffed. So even today he's understaffed. Well, that needs to be funded adequately by the city and by the county, primarily the city if it's a city. But that's not going to be changed. The funding to him is not going to be changed by whether this law or doesn't pass. That's a local taxpayer issue. We need to have adequate police. We have to have the sheriff that are being responsive to whatever they're required to do. And like I said earlier, they pledged, the sheriff pledged when he was elected, that's part of his oath that's filed with the Secretary of State, that he would enforce state and national laws. He's not doing that.
Veronica, I know this is something that you disagree with. Go ahead.
Right. You know, and actually both of your callers raised very good points. As to the second caller, one of the things that we heard from all the top cops from around the state who testified at the hearing this week was they cannot enforce local laws if they're busy becoming de facto immigration agents. And Mr. Adolfo, or Mr. Thayas states that he believes that the El Paso PD is understaffed. If you already have an understaffed police department, then what you will have is an even more strained police force. To the first caller, I think the interesting underlying point in that is the idea of local control. Local voters elect their county commissioners court. Local voters elect their city council. Local voters elect their sheriff. So people at the local level decide what kind of community they want to live in. This bill usurps the will of local voters. It basically tells El Pasoans, you can't decide for yourself what kind of control you want locally. And Republicans at the state level are frequently complaining about the federal government telling them what to do. Well, this is no different. We have state government telling local governments and local communities what they should do.
All right, great conversation going. I got to take a break. You're watching ABC-7 Extra. When we come back, reaction from El Paso County Sheriff Richard Wiles. You can still call our comment line, 915-496-1771. And you can email us right now, ABC7Extra at KVIA.com, or tweet me, Guadian, ABC7. Use the hashtag ABC7Extra. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. The so-called Sanctuary Cities bill passed its first hurdle in Austin, but El Paso State Senator isn't backing down. A state Senate panel approved the bill that would withhold state money from local jurisdictions that don't hand over immigrants already in custody for possible deportation. It now moves to the full Senate for a vote expected next week. It's expected to pass in the Senate and then move on to the House. El Paso State Senator Jose Rodriguez is urging El Pasoans to speak up and make their voices heard.
Well, I don't think we can just throw up our hands and say, well, if this is what's going to happen, que Dios nos bendiga, as we like to say in Spanish. You know, we've got to take matters into our own hands and participate in this process. And if it passes this time, maybe it can be revoked next time.
El Paso County Sheriff Richard Wiles says the county will comply with providing assistance to federal immigration agencies. This comes on the heels of the sheriff in Travis County saying that she is scaling back the aid her department provides. As a result, Governor Greg Abbott is cutting funding for the county. Wiles says the sheriff's office has always had a good working relationship with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE.
We understand the importance of ensuring that we're not releasing criminals into the street, so we will continue to cooperate with ICE under the existing agreements that we have, which is consistent with the letter the governor's office asked me to sign. I had no problem signing it.
An analysis of ICE data by the Texas Tribune shows El Paso County only denied one ICE detainer request between January 2014 and September 2015, and that was because the inmate in question was transferred to another county. I want to go ahead and bring my guest back in is Judge Veronica Escobar and El Paso County Chair of the Republican Party, Adolfo Tejas. Veronica, I want to get back to you because the sheriff talked about signing the letter that the governor wanted him to, but you said he's actually against this bill. How does that happen?
Right. So the ICE holds are actually something a little bit different than everything else that we've talked about in the bill. The sheriff has assured the Commissioner's Court that essentially signing the letter that he signed for the governor has changed nothing. He says that the status quo has always been that when there's an ICE detainer or an ICE hold placed on someone in the jail facility, they are generally and more than likely very, very serious. They've committed a very, very serious crime. For example, rape or murder or human trafficking. And so from his perspective, he told us that he has no problem collaborating with ICE in that instance. And so he signed that letter. It was not a vote of Commissioner's Court. We didn't have any purview over that letter. We actually found out about it after the fact, but he told us that it changes nothing that he's been doing over the last 8 years that he's been in office. What is of great concern, though, is if the state government, state legislators tell us that we need to begin doing more than what the sheriff is comfortable with or what the sheriff has been doing. And that is precisely what the bill is doing. And I want to tell you about some of the unintended consequences, just one of those if we have time. El Paso County signed a settlement, a federal settlement. We were sued in 2006 by a citizen because our sheriff at that time, not Sheriff Wiles, it was a different sheriff, engaged in enforcing federal immigration law at the local level with no training. His folks had no training. It's out of their jurisdiction, which is what we've been saying all along. We were sued, and the citizen won. So we have an agreement with the ACLU as a result of this lawsuit that we will never do that again. When this was raised at the hearing, the sponsor of the bill said, well, sorry, too bad, basically. It's, sorry that you have this thing looming over your head. If we violate this federal order, El Pasoans will be on the hook for millions of dollars possibly because of that violation, in addition to everything else that we're going to be on the hook for. So it's a bad bill, and I feel as though the sponsor, who didn't even know how to define what a sanctuary city is, it was ill prepared to file it, and it's being pursued and voted on simply for political purposes.
All right, Veronica, thank you. Adolfo, I want to ask you, are you at all worried about the possibilities of lawsuits?
Let me touch on two things, first of all. This is not adding a lot to the police or the sheriffs, because when they stop somebody for another reason or there's another incident, that's when they make a determination about whether they're illegal or not. They're not going to go out there and pursue and say, we're going to have a stop here like they do for alcohol. So that's one point I want to make clear. The second one is I want to talk about that agreement. I've read that agreement, and you can Google it under Shapley, and it's an agreement that they've got. And it's an agreement between the county and an individual. There's no other named parties. Maybe the ACLU participated in the discussion, but they are not a party to that agreement. And so what was agreed to was because at the time it was not required. The law changes all the time for different reasons. And when the law changes, there's different actions or behaviors that we or individuals or the police, law enforcement need to have. And there's no difference. There's going to be lawsuits whether you do something wrong and you know it, but you're going to sue anyway. That's going to happen, and it's not going to change. It's not going to get any worse. People, they can think they can sue if you look at them wrong, and that will not change, and it's not going to get worse. It's particularly when law enforcement has the law supporting what they do.
All right, well, we're going to take a couple more calls. It's certainly a contested topic. We've had a lot of people calling into the program tonight. Caller, go ahead.
This is Rob. I don't think it's a good idea to have local law enforcement doing federal work. I mean, really, all the ICE needs to do to comply with the law is to get judicial warrants for these people rather than rely on these constitutionally questionable detainers. That's ICE failing to do their job. It's not a problem with localities. Thank you. Bye.
All right, well, thank you for calling. I think we have another caller. Go ahead.
Hi, I love how Adolfo complains about wasting money on illegal immigrants, most of them children and women. What obsession is there with life after being born? Their obsession is far too often on unborn children. Why don't they try to help illegal immigrants and children as after they're born?
Okay. Adolfo, I'll go ahead and let you take that.
Sure, I'd be glad to respond to that. We are here to help the poor, help the less fortunate all the time. We're here to help the citizens of this country, and that's what we're here to do. We're not here to try to support the whole world. If we start doing that, then this world, this country, our world, will be flooded with individuals that need help. And believe me, I support organizations that help the less fortunate outside of the U.S., and I will continue to do that. But that's not something that we can afford to do because the taxpayers don't have enough money to do that. So we do support people. We are here to support people, but we can't allow anybody to come in whenever they want. And it's the same thing in my mind, is if I decide to go sleep at your front room tonight, that I can just walk in there and do that. People are coming in our door when they want, how they want, and they're expecting us to support them. And that's wrong, and we can't afford to do that.
Okay. Veronica, I'll let you jump in before we go to break.
And those laws are already being enforced by federal immigration agents. There is absolutely no need to involve local law enforcement. All urban county law enforcement leaders have said the same thing. I'm going to take my advice on that from law enforcement agents, and I'm going to take my advice on the law from lawyers that work for the taxpayers here locally. And really, the bottom line question for local folks is, do you want people in other parts of the state of Texas making decisions for you who you can't unelect? If you're not happy with your local elected officials who make local decisions, you can throw us out of office every time we're up for re-election. You cannot touch the folks who are making these decisions for us in other parts of the state right now.
That argument happens all the time. At the state level, at the national level, they are passing laws every day that we have to live with, like it or not.
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. This is usurping local control.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there for a quick second. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I want to share some Facebook comments with you about the so-called sanctuary cities bill. Jane Williams-Haddix says, well, when known illegal immigrants are returning after deportation and killing U.S. citizens, you'd better believe I'm for a bill that does away with cities that aid and abet criminals. Scott Anthony Stefan, we have an obligation to federal taxpayers to uphold the law. And Misael Hernandez, are you true God believer? Then we all have the same rights. We are running a little short on time, but I certainly want to get one more question in, and that is, you know, the state of Texas has tried to pass a similar bill like this before in years past. Veronica, first to you, why do you think that it's really gaining traction now?
It's all political. I mean, I think people saw what Trump was able to do by sweeping into office and using scare tactics. And so everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. And I think we have to fight more than ever to make sure that we retain our local control and that we have local law enforcement focusing on our 911 calls, on breaking and entering, on theft, on crimes that are being committed here. And we let federal law enforcement do the job that they've been doing very well.
All right, Veronica, thank you. And Adolfo, to you, final thoughts on this?
I find this local control argument interesting because there were complaints by our local legislators when the state of Texas put more money into controlling and supporting or defending the border, making it more secure. And we're saying that we were against that. Now we're saying we're against local people trying to get that done because we're losing local control. But if you talk to the people on the border, the young lady from Chihuahua that was the head of their neighborhood organization talked about how people no longer cross the border like they used to. It's dropped significantly. Then you talk to the people where the fence ends and where they talk about, we irrigate and you can see the tracks where they go through at night. We have issues that need to be controlled. And if we're not going to do it at the local level, which I'm hearing that's not what we're supposed to do, then it's not, and we're also not supporting the state level. When the state's trying to do it, it's got to happen. And having local people do it when they're trained, because it changes all the time, is an appropriate action.
It's already happening, Stephanie. That's what federal immigration agents do.
All right, well, that'll have to be the last word on this, but I want to thank you both for being here tonight. Again, thank you, my guests, El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar and the El Paso County Chair of the Republican Party, Adolfo Tejas. Thank you both for being here, and thank you for
Stephanie.
watching. You're welcome. Thank you for watching ABC 7, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week ahead. Bye-bye.